Hello and welcome to our From Inclusion to Belonging pre-conference video series. My name is Carmen Chiapetta and I am the Outreach Coordinator for Portal Charities. And today I have with us Dave Brebner. He is an author and a master electrician, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about his life. We're going to discuss his book, Life Without Limits, and we are going to have a great conversation about disability and beauty. So welcome, Dave. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Excuse me, before we start, I have a terrible coughing tick at the moment because I have Tourette's syndrome. And it's great when you go into McDonald's, everyone thinks you're dying of something, and they get out of the way and you get to the front of the line immediately. So there has to be some advantage to Tourette's.
Oh, absolutely. And that is definitely, finding the silver lining. So Dave, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and where you're from, and a little bit about how this book came to be, or wherever you want to begin?
Sure. Thank you. I grew up in New Zealand. So for my first 28 years, I grew up in New Zealand in the North Island of a place called Auckland. I was a Catholic family of 5 children, mum and dad. About the age of 7, I started to twitch and I did terrible headaches. I grew up in a really good family. I was quite good at school at the start. I had terrible headaches about the age of 7. Then I started coughing, clearing my throat, which I started doing again, and twitching my head. And nobody knew what it was. Back in the 70s, no one knew what Tourette's syndrome was. I also had ADHD, which I've recently been diagnosed, which is another funny story. But nobody knew what it was. Back in the 70s, when nobody knew what Tourette's was, and now it's trendy. Everyone's getting it because it's the big thing to have now as a rock star or whatever. So I had a tough time as a kid, and about the long story short, I made it to about 9th grade, and then fell out of school and was sent to a disabled workshop where they thought I was mentally ill or mentally disabled, and I packed rubber bands and boxes, and I got promoted to the crayon packing department. So I really did well. And about that time, I had an encounter with a youth group in a Catholic monastery, a Franciscan monastery, and it changed my life. Basically, I was loved into life by this youth group, and it turned me around. And I'm grateful to say that I've been given mentors through my life by God at each stage who've developed me and helped me, and I've done really well. And it's life beyond limits. I think God's got a plan, and I often joke about life to the full. It's life to the FOOL as well as the FULL. Because I was foolish in the world's sight, but God had other plans.
And thank you, Dave. Can you tell us more a little bit about what that experience of, being loved by this community and being accepted, because you said you were in like a disabled workshop, right? So definitely not necessarily tracked for mainstream life, right? There was a different direction that, the powers that be said you should be going to.
Well, I went through child psychiatric wards for a while, and they tried different therapies on me and drugged me out to the point. I mean, if you've ever seen someone severely drugged down on psychiatric drugs, it stops you doing what you do, but it stops you doing just about everything. I came to this youth group, and while I was in this, about the same time as I was in this disabled workshop, and God put a elderly man who was an old aircraft mechanic with me in the workshop, and he looked at me and thought I was more intelligent than people were making out, and he cut me loose with welding equipment and all this stuff, and there was no safety in those days, so I blew a few things up and everything, but we actually built a robot together, and it changed my life. It opened me up. It's like Obi-Wan and the young Skywalker. I'd had 9 years of education, and it really just all bounced off because of my problems. About the same time, I went to a Franciscan friary where a group of 4 young people wanted to study the Bible, and it ended up a bit of a revival. We had up to about 160 in the end, and charismatic youth group. And the biggest thing I learned there was that you're a product of your future, not a product of your past. when you're a Christian. And I commend my life to Jesus Christ, and I had nothing to give. I had nothing to give. I had nothing to give. My life was a waste, and I was in a terrible state. And because I had nothing to give God, I think He swapped lives with me. And this youth group, we just, they just loved me, and we just hang out, and I had all these peers, and I think I was very privileged to have a wonderful teenage life towards the end, and I think it transformed me. And I think you meet the body of Christ sometimes before you meet Christ Himself.
That's such a beautiful way to put it, Dave, because I think that's kind of at the core of what we're trying to do with this conference and with these conversations, is to really kind of encourage people that you are the body of Christ, right? And we're going to encounter Christ through others, right? And we can be the ones to open, or if we feel like we have nothing, still turn things over to God and have Him make something beautiful from it.
Oh yes, and we've got to realise, one of the things I often say is, what we've got to offer is our difference, not our sameness. If we're all the same, we've got nothing to offer each other. It's our difference that we have to offer now. Sorry, pardon me. So even in evangelism, because everyone in the world has a specific revelation of God, and a specific revelation of God to each other. Even evangelism, the more people that when people die without Christ, the church misses out on a revelation of Jesus. Because we all have an individual, even though we've got a collective relationship with Jesus, we all got an individual one. And the same with disability. If people discount people with disability, they're discounting the revelation from God that the church is going to be poorer for. So everyone's here for a reason. God's got a plan for every single person. And so if we discount people as valuable or worthwhile or be able to contribute, we are missing out on a revelation for God. So we're destroying ourselves. We're basically, the church is poorer.
That's such a beautiful way to put it, Dave. And I think it really does speak to the vocation of each person. Each person has something beautiful to give to God, right? In however we come, whatever shape
Yeah,
we came, that's
exactly.
our experience of God. Thank you. That's wonderful. And what do you think we could be doing better as a church? How can we be coming to meet others in their necessity, or to encounter their beauty? What are some things we could do?
I think we're raised, particularly in modern days, in what Randy Stonehill said in his famous song, Cosmetic Fixation. We have this cosmetic fixation about what the ideal person looks like, who they are, what they do. And I think we've got to ask God to release us from the cosmetic fixation of beauty, and because real beauty is within. I think we've got to see past what we believe is disability in a way. Like disability is real. People say to me, "Oh, traits is your superpower." It's a load of rubbish. I mean, it's a pain in the neck. All my things. I love that line in the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy, where the woman walks up to the other lady in the cafe and says, "Is the noise in my head disturbing you?" Yeah, I mean, there's so much noise in my head and everything. It's not a superpower. Like neurodiversity is not a superpower. It's a pain in the neck. But it's developed me. I wouldn't be who I am without it. And I think we've got to look past. We've got to look at the positives. I think for most of the world now, the glass is half full rather than half empty. It's half. I mean, sorry, it's half empty, not half full. In other words, we've got this negative naturally in our brains because of the result of the fall. We've got a negativity to look at things from a negative point of view. And if only we could see spiritually, like there's even revelations coming out. I heard a great talk by a scientist and pastor now, who has a lot of non-verbal people in this church. He's a evangelical, And to his surprise, he's found that many of them see angels and talk to angels. And they, because they're non-verbal, they can't communicate this. But he said it's really interesting. And he said, and we would have discounted them as just a poor disabled kid, And some of these kids are having major, through their typing and their talkers, are talking about major revelations from God they're having. The more dependent you are on God, maybe the closer you are to Him. And we're really, 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 really silly. Really, we're really stupid the way we behave with disabled people because I mean, holiness isn't dependent on IQ or anything else. Holiness is dependent on on your dependence with God. And the sooner we all discover we don't even breathe another breath without His permission, the sooner we discover that we actually need Him. And for me, I think I struggle with being dependent on God now because I've succeeded a bit, and in some ways that's a trap because I know I was far more dependent on when I was younger. I've forgotten the question. Sorry.
No, I think that's a beautiful answer because I think it does speak to, right, like this fiction that we're in control and we have it all together, right? And like you said, disability is a real thing, right? Like there's some of us have more challenges than others, but the fact of our dependence is that's something we share. We all
Oh
share that
yeah.
dependence on God, and it's very easy to forget it when we got it all under control and things are going well.
Oh, it makes me laugh, honestly, Carmen. It makes me laugh. People go, "Oh, we're going to go for financial independence or financial security." We are flying on a giant atomic bomb through space at 67,000 miles an hour. The Earth's crust is like the most of it's lava. We have like if you got a basketball and you painted it white, the thickness of the paint is the thickness of the Earth's crust. We've had several Earth destroying meteorites pass the Earth in the last couple of years. One went between the Earth and the Moon.
Oh, that's close.
Yeah. And we want security. We want to tell everyone that, well, I'm a self-made man, I'm secure. Good luck. Good luck. It's the grace of God that's kept us here. It's ridiculous how there's these things called the cosmological constants, and there's 28 of them, I believe, on the Earth alone. There's many out in space, and if one of those was adjusted by 0.1%, we'd all disappear. I mean, we claim that we're going to be independent, that we're going to, we might as well all be disabled because I'll tell you, and depend on God because I'll tell you what, the reality is security is a joke. Security is a joke without God, without God's hand. Security is a joke. Ask any dinosaur how it's going.
100%. 100%. Dave, I want to ask you a little bit more also about your experience as a master electrician and a tradesman, and in what way, because I think a lot of times, we can get stuck in a certain definition of success, or, that the educational trajectory has to be the same for everyone, but there's really a lot of different ways that we can contribute and,
Yes.
in our different ways. So if maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that.
So, well, I'll tell you, one of the things I learned as a career coach, 80% of Americans that go to college within 8 years are doing nothing to do with their degree. 80%. You've got a massive trade shortage the same way we've got a massive trade shortage here in Australia. It's not trendy or cool to be a tradesman. Everyone wants kids to go to college, go to college and go to a degree. And, the tradesmen are making all the money and they've got very little debt. Okay, but I'll get off my political high horse now. Look, I always wanted to be an electrician. I was fascinated by electricity. Nearly electrocuted myself a couple of times as a youngster. But the thing is, I believe that God. Quite often when I'm doing career counselling, I look into the kids' past because there's clues in their past as to their future. There's traits that they do, and I think the fascination with college has got to stop because there's so many great trades. And the thing is, I've gone on to college and done 2 master's degrees now, a bachelor degree. I just pulled out of a PhD because I'm bitten off more than I could chew. But I'll tell you what, I think the trades, um, they give you hands-on experience. They teach you to solve problems, and I think they're great ways. I would get most young people doing trades, and then if they want to go on and be engineers or whatever, extend their knowledge, I would do that. Um, Look, I think it's unfortunate that we've got these ideas of we've got, as I say to young people, you've got to sweep the floor first. You got to sweep the floor first. And this education system is only 300 or 400 years old. Before that, you were discipled by someone in an apprenticeship of some sort. I think we've lost that, the art of storytelling, the art of and what am I, a lot of people that study, they have knowledge, but as I like to say, the difference between wisdom and knowledge, you might have heard this. The difference between wisdom and knowledge is knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is never putting in a fruit salad.
That is so true. That is so true. And I love your description of like the apprenticeship, and education used to be a
Mm.
much more relational
Very,
adventure.
very relational, yes.
and
Yes.
and I think,
It's
mhm,
become mass production, what they call Taylorism, where we just mass produce. Unfortunately, people like me, the 25% of us that are neurodiverse, usually crash and burn in education, and we end up multi-millionaires later because we find our own groove. I mean, look at all the weird billionaires in the world. They're all some of them are quite unusual people, and I think that Mark Twain once said, "Never let school get in the way of your education." I'm not putting school down because we need to read and write. We need to add do arithmetic and math and all that. But um, the reality is, you hit the point really well, Carmen. It was relational. Now it's mass production. It's almost what we call Taylorism, where it's a mass production line. And as long as we get enough people out to feed the machine, we don't really care about the rest. And mind you, how you deal with the rest, because they're so individual. It's in my studies, in my research, I found that in our prison system here in Australia, there's 40,000 men, half the men and male population, and I think in our state alone, 40,000 of them are neurodiverse.
wow.
Now they're pushing drugs, they're committing crimes, they're doing traffic offences. Imagine if they were trained to be tradespeople, and they wouldn't hope to see at school. It's enlightened self-interest. Do you know what that would do to health, education, policing if those people weren't criminals? The whole economy would boom, billions of dollars. But unfortunately, people were invested in education like they're invested in oil. They got too much investment and they don't want to change. And it's enlightened self-interest that we look after people with disabilities because they add to the economy so much. I mean, you only got to look at some of the famous people. Who was the famous physicist in the wheelchair in Oxford? He's just died
Stephen
recently.
Stephen
Stephen Hawking.
Hawking. Mhm.
Yeah, one of the most brightest people in the world, and yet he was stuck in a wheelchair, and yet it's only he started off. If he'd been in that wheelchair to start with, would he have got there? It's enlightened self-interest because when you look at everyone from a revelation point of view, you realise I need this person. As Paul says in Corinthians, we're all different parts of the body, and unfortunately, some of the parts of the body are just going to college and becoming managers and telling people what to do rather than sweeping the floor to start with. And I tell you, I worked for Blue Scope Steel for a while, teaching the electricians and engineers, and they were the best engineers because they did 7 years as an engineer, but they had to become a tradesperson as well. And they had the best balance of everything. And they became the best engineers because they knew what the tradesmen had to do under them. um, Sorry, I'm really great at
No, I
walking
love
away
this.
from the question.
No, these are
Sorry.
great. These are great tangents, and I think that's part of the nature of a conversation, right? It kind of wanders and goes in different places. But no, it's so true. And the reason I bring it up is that in our Diocese of Arlington, we're looking at starting a trade school. The diocese is looking to fill that need and to provide that. And it's really, I think, a great avenue for exploration, because there, like you said, there's so much value in that, and value in working with your hands, and it really does
Oh, yes.
accommodate. like
Oh,
more
yes.
diverse learners.
Before the school system 400 years ago, most people were in agriculture.
Right.
And most people were in agriculture. The 90% of people were, very few people lived in cities. Most people were growing food for everybody. And I think it's interesting that I've worked with, we've got Catholic trade schools over here. Each diocese has a couple of trade schools that teach you the first couple of years of the trade, and then you go onto technical college. But I've taught at them for 6 or 8 years through the technical college I worked for as well, and it's interesting. The problem with it is I mean there's pros and cons to it, but I really believe that trades will even help society, because I think young people lack vision now, and when you sell them the vision, you don't have to sell them much else. We don't sell religion. We sell them the whole thing that you can be, and then you get silly schools that say you can do anything, and no, you can't. You're called to do something. And vocation is vocation. Then there's career. Then there's job, and you generally don't move outside your vocation. But you might be a healer, okay, as a vocation. Now, how many different jobs are there in healing? There's everything from physiotherapists to occupational therapists to nuclear scientists who do the oncologists, endocrinologists. People think, oh, you got to be a doctor or nurse, but there's literally thousands. Even the person that does the filing at the doctor's office is part of the healing process. So you generally don't leave your vocation, which might be healing or teaching or science or like. But there's so much fraud in those things. It's something to suit everybody. And if you're not doing what God's called you to do, you're never going to be happy. And the other thing is, remember John 17:4, in the garden, Jesus said, I thank you, Father, that I've completed the work you gave me to do. If we can't say that, what's our life been about? What's our life really been about? Submission to God. I think the guy who started, the gentleman who started Notre Dame College in South Bend, Indiana, once said that he would never let the spiritual suffer I can't remember the exact words, but suffer at the lack of knowledge, and was the spiritual was number one. If we could teach young people to sit in, and look, over here, as you probably have in the States for years, they had vocations weekends. It was some priest planning an ambush for young guys to become a priest, and young guy would go near it because he knew, wouldn't get married, and that was vocations. It's so silly because vocations is everything. And if you can teach young people to discern what God's asking them to do, you'll get the priests you want, you'll get the nuns you want, you'll get all these things because they'll find out for themselves rather than having to play in ambushes and try and manipulate. And it sounds terrible what I'm saying, but you get the idea. And if young people sell out to Jesus and they submit their lives to Him and they get taught how to discern what they're meant to be doing, we'd have no problem.
I think you're absolutely right, Dave. And I think that idea of vocation being more of a broad word than priest, nun, married state, right? Like if we define it broadly the way you do, then to discern your vocation is to discern like where is your work in this life, right? And
yes.
in what channel,
yes.
what area, like you said it. And I think you put it so beautifully. Like, if you're a healer, like maybe you're the orderly, right? Like maybe you're the one that's just like bringing the bedpan. Maybe you're doing this, but you're part of that profession, and you have dignity and worth, and that's your calling. Whether it's the doctor writing the order or the person executing it, there's so much in there, right? And every person can find their vocation, right? This is not something that's limited. Everybody has a vocation, regardless of ability or disability.
Yes. And I mean, it's really interesting. I think it was Jim Rohn, the famous business guy, many years ago, said, the future is coming. And he said, what a stupid statement. He said, well, why is everyone acting like the future isn't coming? I think he also said that people spend more time planning their 2-week vacation than they do their entire vocation, and John 17:4, I think you, Father, I've completed the work you gave me to do. If we had done that, Well, what have we done? I mean, each person has a calling and has a job to do. And and like, I don't know how career development advice is over there, over with you, but over here it's treated like it's a forgotten piece of education. They leave year 12 or year 13, you say, well, good luck, have a nice time. I mean, what was it all for? And, career development is so important. If we had decent career advisors and that weren't pushed to do 50,000 other things and then get about, 10% of the time to just give people leaflets. If we had people actually teaching and helping people discern, we'd be unstoppable, especially in the Catholic system and the Christian churches and the Christian schools, because, we'd be ruling the place, honestly, because we'd be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Of course, there's struggles. Of course, it's hard. I've been through times when I've been bored out of my tree, but I'll tell you what, I got there in the end, and boredom's part of life. And I think a lot of young people have not learned to be bored these days, and that's the other problem. I think, that's too boring doing that. Well, every job's got its boring. I mean, I'm sure, Carmen, you've got parts of your job that you would, parts of motherhood. Your mother of five. I mean, I call you people saints of the mundane.
Yeah.
My parents in my book, Saints of the Mundane, people that just got on with it. They weren't heroes in the world's eyes. They weren't rock stars. They weren't football players. They just got on with, put their heads down, darn well got on with it. And there's so many people in the world that keep the world running because they're just saints of the mundane.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like you're saying, it's that call to sainthood and holiness for all of us in whatever state we're not going to all necessarily be called to be martyrs or to have some big, I mean, hopefully, right? Hopefully we don't all have to be martyrs, some big glorious and tragic end, but in our daily living of our vocation,
Oh,
living of our life.
oh yeah. People say to me, "Can you die for Christ?" I say, "Well, it's living for Him that's painful." Die. I mean, if someone wants to finish me off quickly, great work, but it's a quick way to heaven. But living for Him every day, doing the plodding along every day. And when I was teaching electricians for 17 years, it was not the guys that were super smart. It was the plodders, the people that just did the work and they got through. People can be tradespeople without too much trouble. They just got to do the darn work.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I am, I'm just a plodder. I do the work and I get there. And honestly, I think we got to stop. Especially for disabled young people, because we're telling them that there's fantastic stuff that they can never have, and it's not true anyway. I've met disabled people who are far happier and far more content and far more fulfilled than able-bodied young people sitting around playing their PlayStation. So I mean, seriously, I mean, if you find out what you're meant to be doing and discernment, I think that's the biggest thing the church can add in education, is helping young people discern what their calling is. If we can do that, we're going to change the world.
I love that, Dave. And I think, Dave, that's a wonderful place to end our conversation and really to encourage the people that are coming to this conference and that get to hear this conversation between us is to go out there and do just that. Be the ones that can help young people discern their vocation in all different abilities. Thank you so much, Dave.
It's been wonderful. Thank you for the chat, Carmen. Bless you.